Hello, wonderful morning, wonderful afternoon, wonderful evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to our International Coaching Week. Welcome, welcome. And I'm seeing that participants are already streaming in and more are coming in. And if you are a coach, ICM Malaysia coach, can you rename yourself ICF coach? And for other coaches, please rename yourself as coach, followed by your name. And if you're already in a room, can you just type in the chat box where you're from, where you're coming from? And for a start, can you please turn on your video so we can look at you and smile at you? Great. Wow. Nice. People are still coming in. We will be starting shortly, very shortly. Just give people some more time to come in, and then we will hit off. Some of you probably would have already joined us for the last 4 events, and today is the 5th event, and we welcome you back. And for those who just joined today, your first event, a very warm welcome to you. And you have not had your breakfast yet, probably you can catch yourself with a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or a cup of Milo, whatever beverage that served you for the morning. Great. Okay, I think we will start now so that we don't delay. We have a lot to cover. Nadiah has plenty of things that she wants to share with you. So I really want to give her the time. So welcome again, everyone. And wherever you are in the world, wonderful morning, wonderful afternoon, wonderful evening. And if it's midnight, okay, we appreciate you joining us. And I would like to acknowledge the support team, Joanne, Timothy, William, Benny, Pat, Rian, Simon, Sotlin, who has been very supportive in making this event happen. Okay, oops, I just realized I've not put on my slides. So hang on. Okay. Now I have my slides. So a happy International Coaching Week to everyone, and very happy and delighted that today we have Nadiah Tan Abdullah to join us for this International Coaching Week, and be our most honored speaker to present on a very important topic, the human resource. So in her words, she used to say that HR stands for human resourceful. So every time we are very resourceful. So before we move on, I would like to invite you to turn off any distractions. And the distraction comes from, most of the time, the handphone, WhatsApp, and also email. So please turn off any distractions, and if possible, find a quiet place. And if you are ICF Malaysia coach, kindly rename to ICF coach plus your name. And then if you're not ICF Malaysia coach, then put a coach in front before your name. And again, I welcome you to International Coaching Federation to join us here wherever you are. About ICF. ICF is the largest global member network of professional coaches as at April 21. And we have more than 45,000 ICF members in 153 countries with 143 chapters in more than 80 countries. And all our ICF members must possess a foundational level of coach-specific training, and they must adhere to the ICF Code of Ethics. Now, about ICF Malaysia. ICF Malaysia was formed 19 years ago in 2002. And as of 30th April, we have 158 members nationwide. More than 77% members hold one of the 3 ICF credentials, either ACC or PCC or MCC. And our mission is two-pronged, advocates the benefit of coaching for every individual and organization. And we facilitate coaches in their continuous professional growth. About International Coaching Week. So International Coaching Week is an annual celebration of the power and the impact of professional coaching. The global ICW starts from 17 to 23rd May. And this year's theme is Defying Challenging Times. And we have many events being conducted globally. Professional coaching has the power to transform individuals and organizations. During ICW, we encourage individuals and organizations all over the world to understand what coaching provides. Now, today's agenda is the highlight of it will be 2 parts. One is just dance session, and second is the experience coaching with professionally trained coaches. All right, we have come to the best part of it. So I would like to welcome Nadiah. Let's have Nadiah on. Nadiah?
Do you want me to put up my slides now or?
There, Nadiah?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
To let people know that you are Nadiah. Hi. All right. So I'm very honored to welcome Nadiah Tan Abdullah to share on this topic, HR leadership in the new norm of post-pandemic. In this session, if you stay throughout the whole entire session, it will provide you the continuing coach education units. In core competency, you will get 0.5 in core competency and 0.5 in resource development. As I know Nadiah in a short time with in fact, I was already connected with her, but now personally connected with her, I realized that she really loves cats. Okay, so that is a small spot. So now to her professional introduction that I want to share with you all. Nadiah has more than 20 years of HR experience, focused on organizational development and change management. Her experiences span across both local and Fortune 500 multinationals. And she has won regional and global awards. And the most recent one is in September 2020, which is HR Best Leader of the Year by HRM Asia. And she owns a BA International Relations from the UK. And she has played lead roles within diversity advocate initiatives with TalentCorp, advisor to Gorgeous Geeks, board of advisors for Accelerate, and she leads for the HR work stream for the 30% club in Malaysia. She's also the elected council member for the Malaysian Employers Federation since 2018. She's a very strong believer in coaching and mentoring, being involved in mentoring programs such as with Lean In, a coach with the Global Institute for Leadership Development programs for the Singapore Cohort in 2018, and she's a certified coach and an NLP practitioner. Can we all just turn on our mic and give a warm applause to our guest of honor, Nadiah.
Thank you.
So Next is, I would like Patricia to help me to bring up the poll. So in this poll, we would like you to give us your response to this question. What profession best describes you? Okay, keep it coming, keep it coming. Great. We are seeing that it looks like we have around HR, around 30%, more than 30% as HR practitioners, and also more than 38% as coaches, whereas the rest will be the consultants, non-HR leaders. Okay, so Nadiah, I'm handing over to you. So I'm stop sharing my screen now.
Okay, I will share my screen. All right, can you see the screen now?
Yes, very clear.
Okay, great. Morning, everyone. It's really nice to have a close of the week for this week for me to do this. And obviously, it has been a crazy week. And as usual, as we speak about VUCA, this morning we just had a bit of that taste of that, because slight technical glitch, and it kind of put me a little bit off. But yeah, we're all ready for this. So first of all, I want to say thank you to ICF Malaysia for inviting me. I mean, certainly this is I think this is the second time I'm doing this for ICF, and it's always an awesome experience to do this, because first of all, I would like to say, I like to see myself as a HR practitioner, and so whatever that I am showing and sharing today will be more of my experience, on-ground experience, because I think a lot of things, there's been a lot of articles, a lot of research. You can Google a lot of things up there, which is written on post-pandemic and so on. So hopefully what I can share is some of the realities where it doesn't seem as easy as what is being written. So let me just go through this. I've actually said this, it's a bit like stretching our current muscles and create new muscles, because I think today, as we organize our organization, we already have all these muscles. We're not going to say post-pandemic, everything else will be changing. I think that's a little bit too much to say, but I think safe to say that we won't be going back to the old now, because certainly we cannot be in the denial. For example, now we thought we were going down in terms of the numbers, but obviously around the world, everyone else is going up with this fourth wave, and it's just crazy. So I'll just try and share some of the data which is coming from IMF and Gartner, so that we can have a bit of a database evidence. Okay, let me just go ahead. In this session, I'm going to split it into 3 sessions. So one is firstly is to understand the changing patterns and how this affect the market, and secondly is to identify, having said all that, what are the requirements and expectations of the HR role, and lastly, how has this challenges the way HR has been thinking. So let me start with this. I think some of you have seen this. We've seen this. For many years I've been running training, and when we talk about change management, the last 3-4 years, we always talk about, for those HR in the HR community, we talk about how it has evolved, and we talk about George Persin being the latest guru in HR. And then, last 2 years, we talk about data analytics. We also talk about, how this has changed and evolved. Just a good example of this is our evolution of mobile phone. And I think at the top here, you can see the favorite Dave Ulrich model. And pre-pandemic days, everyone talks about VUCA. No one really expected the pandemic to come in. Yeah, we talked about IR 4.0, disruption to technology. Who would even imagine, right? So whilst we were talking about change management in the past, we talk about the needs of our people being changed, how we want to manage a diverse work group. For example, in the company that I work in, Sept, we always talk about us being a multi-generational organization, and therefore you have to then handle the different needs of the workforce. And this famous pyramid, Maslow theory, it's a bit of a light humor here. Of course, you know, today we talk about Wi-Fi being the immediate needs. I just went through a cybersecurity training yesterday, and as we talked about Wi-Fi, we just found out that, well, you know, it's not quite safe with hackers coming in and all that for you to just completely use public Wi-Fi. But this was the trends. These were the topics that we were talking about. Yeah. But little do we know, in early 2020, this came up. COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, I'm sure if you look at the pictures, it's very familiar to many of us. You know, MCO, and for me, being in a construction property industry, these scenarios are very, very familiar. Although in the beginning, you know, having the discipline for our workers were quite challenging, but clearly it is something that we need to be careful with. Just look at this picture. I mean, you'll be surprised. This is the normal picture. You know, someone actually just, the workers just putting their mask there. And it makes you think, how much do our people know and understand the impact of COVID-19? And also, how do they take care of themselves? So this huge amount of re-education, huge amount of influencing, because, you know, for the general public who are probably not well educated, yeah, you know, they hear all kinds of stories. I mean, just to give an example, my dad was an ex-police, right? And, you know, obviously he's 70 plus. And so he was okay for vaccination. And then suddenly about, you know, 3 weeks ago, he said, oh, you know, and quietly he says, no, I'm not going. I said, but why? So apparently, I mean, obviously he didn't want to say this to me. He actually said that to my second sister. And so apparently he's been hearing, you know, all these videos and viral stories about people dying, and this was coming through the police community. And I said, no, yeah, but, you know, this was happening. But it just tells you the kind of overload of information that is coming through. And it's just so scary, right? Because suddenly from no information, we have too much information. But the question is then, how do we help organizations deal with this? Because to be honest, and I'm sure all of you would agree, all of us are grappling and all of us are scrambling. And I guess I can say after 1 year, you know, at least now I'm getting more than 4 hours sleep, because I think from March last year to perhaps October last year, I can tell you on average, I had probably 3 hours sleep. And I think for most HR, my fellow HR colleagues in this group, they would also be leading the task force. And it's not an easy thing, because suddenly HR, you're supposed to know everything. You're the Minister of Health, you're the safety officer and everything else, right? And if you look at this picture, it's, you know, they say a picture tells 1,000 stories. So do I open my sales gallery? Do I on my, I mean, can I you know, have my business on and so on? And I happen to be a council member for MEF, which is a Malaysian Employers Federation. And 75% of our employers are actually SMEs. So can you imagine, if they are SMEs, they don't really have huge amount of cash. They don't have the backup of a global setup to sort of like transfer funds here and there. And these are the realities that's hitting on organizations. And sometimes not one size fits all. So what I'm trying to do is share some of those real on-ground experiences, hopefully something that can relate to what's happening now. So now quarantine is the word. Yeah, you see this everywhere. You know, I mean, in my I think the last 2 months, I would have been quarantined, I don't know how many times. In fact, my colleagues had actually given me the crown of Queen of Quarantine. You know, I could be CC1, which is direct exposure to a positive, or I'm like, you know, CC2 layer 2, and you know, I'm forever being quarantined. But we do hear people who are being irresponsible who goes out there. But do we blame them, or how do we help these people who are quarantined and yet they're staying alone? You know, how do they go out and get food? And then you say, go and get Panda, Grab, and so on. but you know it's very costly. So if you are someone who's earning 2,000 plus or minimum wage, you know, to get Grab for your food can be quite costly. So these are some of the things that we will discuss later on, like as companies, what do we put in place? A buddy system, how do we help this kind of thing? Because, you know, you got to really understand the realities that's hitting on the ground when it comes to it. And therefore the new norms is asking us to shift and think differently. Campus closed, schools closing, nurseries closing, and I get mothers, you know, I mean, we have about 44% of our population being women, and about 50% of them are mothers. You know, then they're like, you know, how do I do this? You know, as an employer, do I then say, hey, you know, we allow mothers to work from home? Or do we follow strictly the government SOPs that says, okay, 30% can go and so on? So the huge amount of questions. And today, I think people are just grappling with how do I deal with everything else that is coming through me, okay? So I just want to show some data. And actually, when I was looking through this, I was quite surprised. Okay, now the data is 24th January 2021. And if you look at this graph here, there seems to be a bit of hope. You know, there was an optimistic outlook, because it seems like, and this is before the fourth wave, and we heard about India slowly going on, you know, high incidences, Malaysia being top 10 now in terms of per million. There was a bit of an optimism going into 2021. I must say, in the business, we said, yes, you know, vaccination, all this. And to be honest, I think the business was showing some really good signs. But unfortunately, nobody really expects the worst. Now you talk about Brazilian variant, South African variant, all kinds. And yesterday, I just heard about a case where, you know, negative results from 2 rounds of swab tests. And then on the 20th day, this person went for a scan and found out there was lesion in the lungs and so on. So these are just completely off the grid. And when you look at this, it's quite scary. It's quite scary. So then that brings us to the fact that the unemployment rate, I mean, already the last 4 years, we were already predicting the global economy was going down, but the pandemic just gave a compounded effect, right? So if you look at the unemployment rate, I mean, it's no surprise it's going up. I mean, I know this is a bit small, but I just wanted to show you, this is from Khazanah in 2020, April, that was just after we were hit. It's not very clear here, but the top here, what it says here is agriculture, services, hospitalities. Those are the biggest hit. And if you think about it, right, the biggest hit on unemployment are those unskilled and low-level roles. I remember 10 years ago, I was part of the national, in the discussion committee, we were discussing about how we were going to bring our country to a high-income nation. And there was a real reason for that, because if we would have been able to push it up to that way, where high skill, then we wouldn't be hit as much as this. And so now the problem is, it's bigger than that, because beyond this, unemployment actually then causes, you know, social issues and so on. And it does become an issue for organizations, especially so sitting on the HR seat, to think about it. Now, these are the kind of faces that you see, and it's sad, but you know, I think we are survivors. You know, people are resourceful, and you see this famous captain, and who was a captain, who then had a noodle store, and yeah, he made some good money, but not as much as his, you know, pilot job. I was working for AirAsia, so I know how much pilot can actually gain. And we've got so many of those hospitality services employees who have actually quickly shifted, you know, moved into services industries as Grab and so on. So sometimes as a consumer of Grab, you know, I really, my heart goes out to them, because then sometimes when you go out and order your food and you see them, you know, in their raincoat and it's raining, but they have to do that because they need to survive. And you see new trends like stay-home moms, you know, 15-home business ideas. You know, I get employees who come in and tell me, Nadiah, you know, because of some of the reduction, I would say, because there was no, during MCO, sales galleries are not open. So therefore, they wouldn't have their duty allowances during weekends. So income are actually affected. And for the lower income, it does make a lot of difference because, you know, they may get about 500 ringgit, you know, just out of their duty allowances that can actually pay for their car. And then they come to see me and say, can we do something else? You know, while there's downtime, can I have my own business? And these are questions, right? Which organizations then have to think, do I allow this? Do we move to a hybrid models? And these are the kind of complex questions which, especially when you're public listed and you have to go to the board and, you know, some key policies that has to be impacted on this. Then there's also the phase of depression. You know, I've had employees who have gone through that, and by the way, we have not retrenched anyone, yeah, and we've only had salary cut at the higher level just so that we can manage our cash flow and make sure that everyone has a job. And to be honest, we have tea ladies in our organization because we have sales galleries and so on. We have drivers. So when it's MCO, what else? What can they do? At home, they don't have laptops and all that. But I think we need to rise above it and say, how do we ensure that everyone else still have their job and that they can still keep, because these are loyal employees who have been with us. And so companies, and I'll share that later on in this session, and how companies can actually put in effort in really investing in employee assistance program. I mean, we've always had EAP program, but I think the phase of EAP, employee assistance program, has now shifted to more of a mental well-being versus just helping when someone is having an issue. Now, this is an interesting picture. I remember, and I think most of you remember, in the early 2020, I think it only hit Malaysia around March. We had our first MCO on the 18th of March. And I remember that because I'm leading the task force, right? 2 weeks or 3 weeks before that, we were kind of lucky because we were ahead of the curve. And so we already started our task force and, you know, talked about what are the things that we need to put in place. But when it really happened, everyone else thought it was just a China issue in Wuhan. And it was like, oh wow, you know, they locked down the whole country, the whole state. And it was such a foreign idea for us because we thought, really? But yes, it was only a China issue then, but it became global. Now then we talked about all this that's happening, you know, what has actually shifted in terms of the requirements and expectations. Now, very quickly, I think this is one key slide. Very quickly, we saw leadership in action, increased frequency in leadership meetings. I mean, I remember in Sept, when we started NCO, we used to have once a month monthly meeting, and we went to 3 times a week. Can you imagine? 3 times a week. And I was writing the minutes, and I was like, oh my God, you know, before I knew it, Monday, tomorrow, by Tuesday night, I got to make sure the minutes are out for Wednesday. But that is so important because as leaders, we have to be on the ball. And everyone was just scrambling because you were not sure, still very new. You go into the meeting, and as usual, I don't know about other countries, but in Malaysia, you know, I know the government is trying their best, but SOP announcement goes out, SOP is not very clear. And, you know, I go into a meeting and voila, you know what the boss says. So what do you think, Nadiah? And I'm like, I'm just trying to finish up reading the SOP. So these are all the realities that goes in. But having said that, clarity is so important. So for us, in Sept, for example, we had very quickly our Finance Investment Committee meeting to look at what are the cost-effective measures. And I use the word cost-effective because really it is cost-effective, because we need to look at shifting our business plan. Yes, we had that grand business plan and say we're going to do this, but this is happening and this is hitting us now. And if we don't act very quickly, it is going to catch our tail. Companies were just setting up of a pandemic task force, and I think most companies would have HR, risk management. In our case, we had HR, risk management, finance, IT, group marketing, and groups communications and so on, because we see that as an interfacing functions where, you know, everyone else has to be put in place. And I remember our first ever COVID positive case in the company was in February, because we had one of our sales managers who actually had a pre-planned trip to, I can't remember, was it Egypt, I think. The trip was early February during Chinese New Year. I mean, who would have thought, right? I mean, it hasn't come into Malaysia as well. But then by March, we found out that she had been notified as positive. I mean, hell breaks loose because we didn't know what to do, and there was one first test case. But today, I tell you, we all have all the protocol in, everything else is in place. So I think having a clued on task force is very important. And we had a task force meeting every day, including Saturday, Sunday. So tell me, I didn't have a life. Yes. So leadership meeting three times a week, task force meeting every day on an hourly basis, and literally just monitoring it up to probably around June. And then we shifted to once a week. And then now we're back to we continue once a week. We may, depending on the numbers, we may then, increase that. And at any point of time, when there is a positive case, there's an emergency meeting. It doesn't matter, it's 11 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the morning, everyone gets onto it. So I think these are the new norms. People are now saying, what is office hour? Is it 9 to 6? Is it any time? And work from home. Work from home means you work all the time. Well, jokes aside, we work all the time, but I will come back in the third section and see how HR has to moderate that and ensure that in the long run, I think fatigueness comes into the picture, and we need to ensure that this doesn't disrupt the wellness of the workforce, because it can be unproductive. Significance of influence, leadership influence in employee experience, so important. I have to say that during the 1 year, you either see leadership or you don't see leadership. So this is, from a HR perspective, this is the best time for you to really see who are your true leaders, because, we're all human after all. When you don't know what to do, you don't know what to expect, your innate internal strength comes into surface. And I have seen some of the unauthorized leaders who came out to be true leaders, and we'll discuss that later on. In terms of organizational culture, obviously, enhanced innovation. I can say many companies are looking into that. For our company, for example, we're now thinking, should we just be a pure player in property, or do we really need to think about bundling it and partnering, having alliances, doing. And I know Marsing and a few others, they've gone into other businesses and all that. But the point is, you need to really look at your own house and figure out if you're going to do that, do you have the capacity? Because I know for a while, everyone was jumping into the bandwagon. Okay, let's go into glove business because that was making a lot of money because everyone needs, or let's go into mask. I think the reality is everyone else would have a very different scenario, and the leadership has to really look into, number one, the capacity of the organization in terms of skills, number two, financial capacity, and number three, is the organizational culture ready for this. I'd like to just touch on growth and transformational mindset, and I think some of you have heard of Simon Sinek talking about infinite thinking. And infinite thinking doesn't have to be this huge, big thinking. I'll give you an example, and I think for some of you who have heard me in other sessions, I've actually said this. We had an incident last year where, all our workers, we actually put them on CLQs, which is Central Labour Quarters, and I think you've heard, all the property and construction business would do that. And when we do that, it means that they will be put in a guarded area. During the MCO, the company actually provided food and so on. So, food are being sent across to them. But at the same time, Malaysians being Malaysians, the residential area, the residents are, warm-hearted, and they would want to also give away some food, and they've been giving. But we needed to ensure that security and safety is being monitored. So we can't simply just allow anyone to come into the area and just drop off the food. So there was one incident where we had a site supervisor who was actually on duty, and there was this resident who wanted to, and apparently she has been putting the food, and it just so happened that day he was there, and he said, no, just put it out here, we'll handle it. And she was arguing with him, and she said, look, I've been doing this. And this guy, site supervisor, not a technical director, was trying to tell her, no, don't worry, we'll take it, and somehow in the world of technology and a viral video, someone videoed that, and it went around, and obviously it came to the management, knowledge. So everyone was like, oh my God, no, this is not good, because it appears as if he was arguing with her. As a HR person, I had to watch the video 4 times, I can tell you. I watched the video 4 times because there were some portraits like, oh no, this cannot be happening, this is bad for the branding, blah, 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 and so on. I look at it 4 times just to understand the intent of our poor employee, the site supervisor, who's not highly educated, and he was just trying to do his best. And I think he was just extending, being an ambassador to the company. But maybe he was not fluent. He has not been trained by group communications, how to handle, PR script and so on. But he was trying to do his best. And so I actually spoke to the EVP and said, look, I think let's handle it well, because can you imagine if we would have reprimanded the guy and the guy would say, look, I was trying my best to do this for my company, and why am I being reprimanded? On that point, I think communication is so important, and context is so important, because I think when things are going on wrong, emotions are very high, stakes, risk for the company becomes much, much more a priority, and therefore, as HR or leaders, we must rise above it and actually be more human, and really understand it and communicate in a compelling approach to say that I understand what you're trying to do. And so what happened was, immediately after that, next step of action was for us to actually have a training session for those key people, because we know this is going to happen. This is going to happen. How do we prepare our people? So therefore, risk management becomes a key priority, because there's reputational risk, there's a lot of other risks, but everyone has the best intent for the organization. Now, when it comes to people, you can see that I think what I want to highlight here most is the higher expectations from employees now. The demand has shifted. They want to be a voice in decision-making that involves their well-being. They want to be heard. They want to have authentic and transparent communication. I think during MCOs, we had all kinds of communications, which I'll show you later, just making sure, even showing some of the numbers in the business and basically being completely transparent and say, why do we need to do this cost effectiveness? Because if we don't do this, it's going to affect our jobs and so on and so on. So I think it does push leadership and management to a certain extent to a corner, because if you're not used to doing this, it can be quite terrifying. But in reality, I think it helps, because after going through 1 year, I find that transparent communication and being on the ball with whatever that's happening, and continuously communicating in your organization with your people helps in the long run. So what happens? Everyone's self-scrambling, and I took this from Gartner, and basically in most of the HR community, and we all fairly follow this in a way that you've got this respond very quickly, March, April, May, respond quickly, panic, task force, clean up, do a return to work, sanitization, or whatever you do. And then we kind of paused in May, and then we decide, okay, let's just not panic, pause, and learn from some of the patterns. And actually, it was a blessing in disguise, because it actually floated up some of the weaknesses that we had in our organizations that we didn't know, because when everything else is going well, you see everything to the bones. You don't see anything that is underlying there. But when things are not going well, then it's showing. So I'm just going to go very quickly here. The last stage is renew, and which is basically now. Now organizations are renewing. And if you remember the first slide, I said why the paradox of we have high employment, but why do we see talent movement in the market? It's because companies are now realizing they have to refresh the business model. They have to refresh the talent profiling that they have in organization. So while some are retrenching and cutting down, they're now hiring new profile, because maybe just take Air Asia, for example. I used to work for Air Asia, right? From aviation. Now, Tony has now come up with a data company. So obviously you need a different profile. They're still hiring, You know, I hear some of my friends, they say, I don't understand, you know, people are losing jobs, but they're still hiring. So this is where I think communication is there. I mean, they are hiring because they are preparing themselves for the future. So that is happening. I'm going to go very quickly. The other research, I think you can see that, I think what it says here is basically, you know, the community is showing that these are all the changes. But I think I want to touch on point number 6. Some finding work more humanizing, or others finding it dehumanizing. And that is so true. That is the paradox of it, right? I've heard of very, very sad stories where it's catch-21 position where, you know, it's like a chicken and egg, because employers who are running out of cash, what do? And they had to take drastic effect, and some even don't pay, but that's the reality. So they seem to be sort of dehumanizing their approach. And I think we need to understand that not everyone are in the same boat. But I think the pandemic has actually told us that we need to plan well. We need to have a cash aside, whether it's organization or a family, so that we know if something were to fall off the ground, we still can manage through. So companies are now reshaping, reinventing, and reinventing. Now, I just want to run through very quickly a few slides. These situations have given us some observation, and as HR, because the topic is, you know, HR in the new norms, we have been tasked to look at many things from the, you know, from the smallest to the more strategic. You know, our state of mind dictates the way we will respond to the current situation. So everyone else, in employees, leaders, everyone is just responding differently, depending on their personal experience. You know, we were asked to set up you know, new work conducive area. You know, you've got the probably bigger organization, shells of the world, I understand, who actually provide allowances for economic tools, working tools at home. But there are other companies that are smaller ones who can't even afford to pay their own paycheck. So how do we do this? And then, you know, we have these things about guidelines for working from home for managers. I mean, this is from Microsoft. You know, we have this also. We send it out in communications. But the question is then, you know, what is the best recipe for your organization? You know, how do you balance affordability and being caring for the organization? And are we all at the same level of maturity? Then we talk about even to the simple and subtle things like what is the right attire. You know, we in HR we say, okay, you know, the bosses say, hey, you know, Nadiah, do we need to send a memo like, you know, are people just wearing singlets at home and so on? Because for some it's a shock, but for most multinational, working from home is quite. I mean, for me, I've been used to the fact of, you know, working from home, but for many local companies it's a new thing. You know, so the subtle thing. And, you know, we talk about ensure no disruption. Yeah, that's me. And that was last year, really. I mean, this is me doing a conference call and I got my cats, you know, on the side playing, and suddenly, you know, they're all quiet. But the reality is you have parents and mothers who are, you know, having babies clinging onto them and like, mommy, mama, and just because mama is at home, they just want to be with mama. And I had one case where this guy actually had to see me and say, look, you know, he's almost going into depression because his 2-year-old daughter is very close to him and clinging, and he's doing a sales job. And so he has to make a lot of calls remotely from home because they have to ship, right? Sales gallery is not open. And he had to hide himself in the room and lock himself because otherwise the girl is going to come in and, you know, clean, and he can't just do the work. And the girl will be crying outside. I was just going bonkers for him because it's just, and not everyone has a huge space, you know, room with 2 screens, you know. Some are just, you know, literally at the dining table, 3 or 4 of them with, you know, 2 children online. So these are realities which comes to mind. What can we do as human resource to help the situation? Communication to all is very important. Leadership support is key in role modeling. And why I say this, I'll give you one story. It was somewhere last year, and when we actually said to everyone, look, you know, you got to manage your deliverables, because managing remote workers is very different from you have your employees face to face, and therefore we need to quickly train our managers to especially for the sales and marketing, they're just not used to it. There was one incident where we had one employee calling us, crying and so on, and saying why, and it's just because the employees feels that the manager doesn't understand. The manager is not trusting what the employee is doing, asking the employee to really do a lot of detail logging, blah blah blah, and so on. And was it really necessary? And when I spoke to the manager herself has her own issues. The manager is receiving instruction from one layer on top. And therefore we realized, look, this is not happening. It's just like a chain of effect from top to bottom. And so that's why we said leadership is so important. And during this time, we focused a lot on leadership. So in October last year, we launched our Satiric Leadership Reimagine program to create a people managers community for the 240 leaders that we have trained throughout the different levels. And this year is kicking off where we have roundtables, we have journaling, digital coaching with Nalovi, we have all kinds of things just to support leaders, because we realize they have a huge impact down the line to everyone else in the organization. Lastly, so whilst we talk about all this, just mindful of time, really the expectation in HR has really changed and shifted. And everyone else talk about digital transformation. It's such a buzzword, digital transformation. And then we realize, oh, there's a difference between digitalization and digitizing. So, and not many people know that, right? They were like, wow, we're all on digital transformation journey, but do we really know what it is? But really, it's all about shifting our traditional way to leverage on technology. And when we talk about this, most often very quickly, I think companies shifted towards using technology. For me personally, I'm happy for COVID, because I think COVID did the job for us, because we're like, oh my God, saliva drooling, influencing, talking about this digital transformation for 1 year plus, and COVID hit us. Within 3 weeks, we then converted 1,600 on MS365. If COVID didn't happen, I think we're still probably strolling along doing this, because everyone else, yeah, I have to meet face to face. And now look, everyone else can survive with M365, and it's just wonderful. We saved, I did check on cost saving. We saved on our traveling mileage claims. Yes, but we want to make sure that we don't lose that human touch. So it's about having that balance. But here, this picture, it says most often when we speak about digital workers, it gets the shirt of everyone else who are not quite sure of the digital work. Because everyone else wants to be on the bandwagon. But I think we must make sure that we are ready for it. And it's about creating a strategy that is milestone based and understanding where you are. So last year, we started with Sendo on a digital assessment for our pilot group, sales and marketing. They had a pivotal role, and look at where they are so that we can then use it as a assessment gap to move it into development. I think that's the way to go. And in October, November, December, we trained about 1,000 plus of our employees, both management and non-management, on the awareness of the impact of digital transformation on our business, because you'll be surprised in how little some of our employees know of this. And why do we do that? Why do we invest so much on it? Because we want to make sure that everyone speaks the same language, they understand, preempting them, so that this year, when we then move very quickly into some of the adoption of technology, our people are ready. So in fact, this year, we then moved on to the non-management and engaging them in a more simplified version, so that everyone else is on board and the change is not, sort of shocking to them. So I think being a typical OD person, I always believe you got to make sure that you do it in phases. And I know this book by John Kotler is a long time book, The 8 Steps of Change Management. I truly follow it like a Bible. Number one, create a crisis. And that's what COVID did for us, create a crisis, boom, everything else goes on. Then we talk about all this change in the workplace. And I think this is not something new, but this is something that many companies are now discussing and struggling. Do we go on, full blast, work from home or hybrid model? And depending on where you are, what industry you are, these questions are important. I'll just share a little bit about how we embrace VUCA during MCO and lockdown. I mentioned just now about how do we communicate during MCO. We use email, WhatsApp, MSU, all kinds, because in our industry, not everyone else is on email. And we'll make sure that, so for example, my comms person, whenever we have an announcement, she knows there are a few steps. Send email, get into the HR coordinator's WhatsApp. I will send to the BU heads, business unit heads WhatsApp, because it's much faster way, because otherwise, you get emails being swarmed and so on. RTW is written to work guideline, and you see there's 2 versions, because, you have to refresh it. And so we're always on our toes, and it's just very busy. And even in our communication, we've got to make sure that it's not just wordy, but infographics, because we have to appeal to all kinds of workforce. How do we learn? I know for some of the organizations, especially the multinationals, quite advanced, but for many of the local companies, there's a bit of a hand-holding. And I have to say this, right? I mean, during a challenging time, we also try to look at some of the sort of free online programs, but making sure that these are actually logged in into our training hours. And we have a buddy system where our training and development team will then actually help out and buddy up. And not only that, we make full use of the online platform to make sure that we engage them. And Sept, for example, is a very sort of people culture. So we have loads and loads of activities before pandemic, Raya luncheon, all kinds of, we have festival luncheon, we have wellness campaign. So and it's always about having groups and groups meeting face to face. We're just so family oriented. But COVID has forced us to think of other ways to do this, because we cannot miss the engagement. So we also have other ways. We have this is WIN circles. WIN is Women of Inspiration. There's our women network, and through our version, that's me and my cat. Yeah, we had, like, for example, 1 week Parents Day. So on a Friday, we have a 1-hour session where all the colleagues join in and they bring their kids and they talk, and the kids learn what do mommy do. This is a fitness once a month. We had pets, those who are we're very inclusive. Yeah? We want to make sure that we don't discriminate anybody. So these are the ones where this guy Satish from group marketing, happily showing the son, this is what daddy does, and these are all our colleagues and all. So in a way, we kind of kept that employee engagement still close without meeting. And I want to share Naluri. I'm sure you've heard Naluri is a app which has got health mechanism and also digital coaching. So we partnered with them and helped. First, it started off with just helping to allow a platform for any of our employees to go through and we have an analysis and see how many of our people are struggling through, because we don't know what journey they go through. Some of them have spouse losing jobs, some of them are going through other anxieties, family members are having loan sharks waiting at the doors and that kind of thing. And slowly towards last quarter, we then moved on to digital coaching, and this year we have a lot more modules in there, and that becomes another platform, which is a third party, to allow our people to have learning and development, and also a space where they can actually have one-to-one coaching, which is all paid by the company through digital or even through phone call. Okay, having said all this, it's not like you say, okay, we hope everything else will go well. I mean, hope is always a good four-letter word, right? But you need to have strategies and so on. I think the 2 key things that I believe in organization that's just so important among all other things that we spoke about is enabling employee connectivity. Because if you don't have employee connectivity, how are we going to engage with them? MCO, and so it comes with a certain level of investment. And I think secondly is facilitating responsive and inclusive leadership. That is so important. So our leadership team, and I say that leaders at senior level and also managers at mid-managers, they are personally going through their own personal journey as well. This is the most probably important slide, and this is the second last slide that I have. I'm going to run quickly. I just realized there's only 5 minutes there. HR is expected to be like a Wonder Woman. Sorry, I'm biased, I'm a woman. So Wonder Woman is not Spider-Man or anything like that. Number one, courage to challenge and be challenged. There have been many cases where I have been put in situations in meetings where, you know, I feel like I'm alone in the desert, but, you know, I have to do my job professionally and question some of those things. It can be painful, I can tell you, because the business is busy focusing on how do we deliver the numbers, because we have a responsibility to our shareholders. But for my role, how do we help them balance, because we're the guardian of employee wellness. I think getting into that balance of numbers and being human is one tricky trait. I think slowly we're seeing that evolution. Our leaders are also slowly moving into that pattern of understanding. Looking, you know, if we go for the numbers and we open up our sales galleries and expose our people, it's going to catch our tail. We've seen that. So we're now, you know, having second thoughts and really thinking more deeply. And I said, challenge, courage to challenge and be challenged and be willing to be challenged, because sometimes we are wrong. We don't have all the data. And so it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to say, yep, sorry, I was wrong, or I don't know. For example, the vaccination program, you know, on one day, I think 2 days ago, flooded into WhatsApp. And then suddenly say, oh, it's fake news. And I'm like, okay, hang on, you know, but my leadership team is expecting me to know all the answers, right? 24/7, you know, working until I don't know what time, just clearing it up. Finally, we did register and say, okay, let's just register. And yes, it's legit, it's not fake. Whole organizational agility. I think HR has to drive and facilitate scenario planning, because we have to think of different scenarios. The latest wave has just shown us that there's no way that we can manage without, you know, having to think of different scenarios, because there will be different scenarios that is hitting us that we don't know. Missiles are coming from everywhere else. Design thinking, you know, reviewing on your training investment, reviewing on your policies. Certain policies are just irrelevant, completely irrelevant. Cultivate, nurture company culture. And this is where I think HR has to have the courage to then question. Maybe some of our organizational values are not relevant anymore. For me, for example, we're now re-looking at our leadership competencies, because leadership traits have now changed. You know, response to crisis, agility, flexibility are the key traits, which probably in the past may not be, would have been maybe, you know, team leading or influencing and so on. DEI is clearly important. Everyone else should be included. We just launched a leadership journal with videos starting from our leaders. And yesterday we had Alex, our head of GICT, and one of his motto he said was, we should not discriminate employees whether they're working from home or from face-to-face, because it's very natural for us to have a closer relationship with when someone we work face-to-face. I think we have to be very careful with that. On the resourceful and creative, you're wondering why I put this. Actually, I just want to share a story. This is my team. So if you look at all the different backgrounds, after a long fatigue, long hours and all that, I realized that sometimes we just need to come up with ideas and just create an excitement for our employees. Or even for me, for my team, because I think HR is important. If we are slowly dying, I think the whole organization is going to die. So we need to be in high spirit. No matter what, we need to have high resilience. So just about 3 weeks ago, well, before Hari Raya, I just came out with an idea. I said, look guys, you know, I'm going to give a challenge. Let's come up with a background for HR, and the winning team will get 100 ringgit. And it created a whole lot of activity and excitement. You know, I mean, 5 teams came up, but they didn't know on the day itself. I said, okay, I'm going to up it. It's 200 ringgit. And so you see all kinds of different background. Those were the submissions. And of course, they have to come up with stories, what it means, and so on. And of course, this is from my own money, from my own budget, not from the training budget, which I think it's fine. And I up it to 200, and at the end of the day, I say, okay, look, all submissions going to get 50 ringgit. And there's one guy who came up with a logo, you're going to get an additional 50 ringgit. And that created, in just one simple idea, it created a whole lot of buzz. And now the team is back to being, not saying that they were not motivated, but, you know, you just have to be thinking of ideas to just create that. Lead authentically with a caring heart. You have to be very sincere. HR unfortunately have to follow up on cases, call them, and understand where they are in the positive cases. And HR cannot be the one who's so afraid, because I know that there are some of my colleagues who are so scared of COVID, won't even dare to step into the office. But unfortunately, we don't use a bulletproof vest, but it's our job. We have to come in and got to make sure that you care for people, because if you're scared of dying, others are scared of dying as well. Unfortunately, it's our job. And lastly, I think it's so important, build your own resilience. It's so important that you have your own emotional stability. I can tell you many occasions last year, it was one call I was with my team. I was almost in tears because it was just the weeks before, it was the long hours, and it was just so many things happening. But it's just so refreshing to have a team that's there to support. And I think with this whole COVID experience has come up with a whole new spirit where you know that you're there for each other. And I think for us, HR and HR being coaches, you do need a strong support structure. Your friends, your HR community. I think within the HR community, you have different groups who will be there for you to say, look, I just feel like giving up, or look, I don't know what to do. And it doesn't mean that you're no good at all. It doesn't mean that you're no good at all. Don't be too hard on yourself. And it's okay to say, I don't know, and to be vulnerable. So lastly, agility is key in being relevant. So sorry, I know it's 10:02 now. That's the last of my slide. I'm not sure whether we have time for question now. Thank you very much. Florence?
Thank you, Nadiah.
Do you want me to take off the slide off, share?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so we will take on the questions. Maybe we attempt to take maybe 2 or 3 questions, since we have time constraint now. Will that do, Nadiah?
Yep. I'm sorry, I went beyond time. I mean, I could go on and on. Give me 2 hours.
But actually, there's a lot of insights from the presentation. So I will pick a couple from the pre-event questions. The first one is, how to design human capital planning for one's company in times of pandemic, as resources are to be well allocated and distributed. Okay, so basically the question is, how do you come up with your HR strategy, right? Post-pandemic, yeah. So I think one of the first thing is you really need to go back to see where you are, because obviously whenever you do your plans, you don't do for 1 year, you normally do for 3 years or 5 years, right? So you would have had presented it last year and said that should be on, but pandemic has actually sort of disrupted your plan. For me, I say go back to zero base, go back to where you are, collect as much data as you can, and if you need, speak to as many stakeholders as much as possible. That's what we did this year when we had to present our 5-year business plan to our finance investment committee. Was to relook, and I had to share some of the plans that I presented in October 2019 in our board retreat, because it's just not relevant anymore. So step number 1 is collect your data, understand where you are, speak to key stakeholders. Step number 2 is you need to cast your network, and I say this because I think we're living in a world of alliances and so on, and you're not alone. You need to understand what's happening in the other companies, because there are companies who are ahead of you. So learn from other companies, what are they doing, and see how that can fit into your situation. Because I think there's no point being egoistic. I believe there's a lot that we can learn from different companies. And when you have a huge network, that's where you can gather all the information. Step number 3, then having all that, then you must actually put all into a strategy that is put into immediate, short-term, and long-term, because the last 12 months have shown us that you cannot have just one strategy. You must split it into different strategies so that you're not caught by surprise. Okay. And the next question is, in the current COVID-19 situation, and assuming VUCA is going to be the new norm, to what extent has the need for the coaching changed, and what was done to navigate these changes?
Okay, good question. I'll try and answer this. because actually all of you are coaches here. You're probably better off than me. But anyway, I would say to a certain extent, I think there's a bit of, I mean, personally from a HR practitioner point of view, there is a need to change slightly in terms of the coaching approach. I think in good times, you know, you have all this standard model and standard steps. You see, you follow through that. But I think in times of VUCA, there is a need to have an agile approach. When I say agile, meaning that the more importance being put on your coachee, because you need to further understand the situation of your coachee and flex the style or the model, you know, whatever model that you're using, to be able to serve the needs of your coachee. I would say maybe there's a slight change of 10%, but you know, 90% is still the same. To that point, I think within the organization, what we've done is to simplify the steps, because I think when VUCA is happening, changes and disruptions are all happening, people just don't have time to reflect as much as we want them to. So I think simplification is the way to go. And so far, I think that has worked for us. Because when you have a simplified version, people just want to go action and they can see the results immediately. That's my view.
Okay, I'm going to share with you the final question. I'm very mindful of the time, and I know that many of you have posted a lot of questions, just that we do not have enough of time to address all your questions. So I decided to pick this one. During this pandemic, all HR leaders must juggle between board of directors, management, bosses, stakeholders, and our most precious employees. How do you or Satya deal with the demands, keeping people disruptions intact?
$1 million question, and very tough, very challenging to answer, but I shall answer that because, you know, I go back to the first principle of what I do as a HR person, and this is what I tell my team, you know, HR, what we do is we have a moral responsibility, a social responsibility. For example, when you take on someone to a job, you're not just responsible for this person to make sure or enable him or her to be successful, but you're actually affecting the person's family too. Yeah. So going back to that basis, I said, us in HR, we have a very challenging role to play. We have to mitigate risk for the management, including BOD, board of directors, and we need to also be an employee champion. I always feel that I stay true to my professional call as a HR person. I think doing the right thing is important, but doing the right thing with the right data, evidence-based, and present it accordingly, with a view of, if we do this, what will happen, or if we don't do this, what will happen, so that the board and the management are rightfully apprised of the consequences, because an organization cannot be a successful organization without the people. So the people has to be at the heart of it. But I would say, don't be a dead hero. I mean, as in like, don't be like, yeah, you know, I'm championing my employees and so on, but make sure you do it with great finesse and data. Data always works. So that's the way to go. I think so.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the $1 million question, and with $1 million response from you, Nadiah. Thank you very much. So I know that some questions are not being addressed, and some already, those questions somehow have been addressed through the presentation.
Florence, so maybe if I'm on leave today, I actually took leave and I really want it. So they can send the question to my LinkedIn and I'll try and respond accordingly. Give me some time, but yeah, send to my LinkedIn and I will try and respond accordingly.
Thank you very much for this offer to our participants. So you can send your question, especially those that we are not able to answer during this session. So I'm going to bring up my slides again and share with you Nadiah's LinkedIn. All right. So continue to connect with Nadiah Tan Abdullah at her LinkedIn, and that is the QR code of her LinkedIn direct to her. So you can scan this QR code. If not, you can click on the LinkedIn in the chat box.
Make sure you get the right Nadiah, because there's another Nadiah Abdullah, and both of us who is from SIME, and both of us always get exchange emails. So mine is Nadiah Tan Abdullah. Okay.
And I think this link is correct because
yes. You can't go wrong with QR code. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I hope that was valuable, but and I apologize for taking more time. And thank you, ICF.
It was a lot of great insights and very inspiring section. A lot about HR, and your sharing has enlightened us a lot. So I want to share about tomorrow. Tomorrow we will be having Jess and Shruti to join us, and the topic will be how coaching supports mission-driven organization, and that will be our last event tomorrow. The link will be put into the chat box. If not, you could just scan this QR code on my slide here. I give you a few seconds, and then I'll be off to another slide then. Okay, so I'd like to invite you all to save this date in your calendar. From the 13th to the 23rd September, we are very proud that we will be having our International Coaching Leadership Virtual Summit on these days. So save it in your calendar and stay tuned for more updates. And before we go, I know that some of you have to go off for your busy schedules. To connect with ICF Malaysia via the following channels. We have the QR code here. If not, the links are put into the chat box for you to click on. So I give you a few seconds to scan the QR code. Okay, thank you very much again for busy and even this session. So we are going to have a 5 minutes, and so we'll back again for